So let's begin with the presentation. So this video is sort of very symbolic of our practice, and this is where there are two windows trying to come together, have a conversation, but they're not. They're still not overlapping. There's something there that is left behind. There's a conversation that suggests that there's something more. This is a spirit with which we approach any sort of creative exploration or any conceptualizing that we do, architecture or otherwise. That's a theme that I'll begin with, where some of our explorations begin with looking at very simple things and looking at a probability of, is there something more to it? So these are some of the images that we've created, and this is also reflective of how we look at an image, how do we create our image, which also translates into architecture sometimes. So this is an image where we are trying to look at, can a grasshopper fall in love with a red grasshopper? So there is something there. We also look at very normal images, see if it can be defined as something more. This is an image of Raj Kapoor from a very famous movie. So this is where we slightly modify the image, and it starts to talk about a song more than a movie. So the song is Mera Juta Hai Japani Patloon Englistani Sar Pe Lal Topi Rusi, because no one gets that anyway. So these are again some images that you see all around Bangalore, which I'm yet to make sense of it, because these are images from the rural parts of Karnataka that they've pasted all over Bangalore as a catalog. And they've given the tag as Nenapirali Idu Nimma Nagara. Translated, it says, remember, it's your city. But it's got nothing to do with the city. So can there be something more to it? Can we change the image of it? So we start looking at slight interventions where through graffiti or give another layer through which it could be read in a different manner. So this is one more example of that, where they're saying, remember, it's your city, but so we try to give it some context. I mean, that's the skyline if you can't make out from the light over here. So we try to give it some context, and these are some of, this is just to get the tone of our work, the way we look at things. So we look at mundane objects like a rupee note and see what's inside a note. So once we start looking inside it, if we peel it, it is still money. I mean, that's, kind of engagement we try to get into, like what's inside it, what's inside everything. One of the strategies we apply to understand any object or any image is through inverting its sensibility. So when we invert the sensibility of a safe, make it transparent, is it still a safe? So going ahead with that same line of thought where we are inverting the sensibility, this is one of the projects that we were commissioned to build a Shiv Mandir, a temple for Shiva. Now the main mandate over there was that temple had to be like a Shivling, which a Shivling is a phallic image, a male organ, literally, which is always a positive image, like. So it had to look like a Shivling in plan and in elevation. So we try to look at something more, because once you understand an image and try and do it, the whole process of exploration is done. So we try and look at how do we invert the image. So instead of the Shivling being read as a positive image, can it be read as a negative image? So this is where we sort of looked at the Shivling as a void that is, I mean, the form is read as a void and not as a positive image. This was a very interesting exercise for us, because we were inverting a male phallus at its core, and no one seemed to get it. So it was a very internal joke for us. So these are some of the images where we create for the client, and so during night it will sort of light up. So this is where we are creating an alternate image for the Shivling itself. Now this is where it can go beyond architecture. Now the image could be very easily marketed as a lamp, or any representation of Shivling can be re-looked at. So this is one of the projects where the whole thought process started from, the theme of the thought process started from somewhere else, and it's translated into architecture. So this is one more theme, or where we start using design as a tool to explore a certain story or narrate a story. So this is a campaign that we created. So there is an institution called JNU in Delhi. It's an extremely politically active institution where everything is contested. Anyone who is interested in getting into politics goes over there, goes into the student body and comes up through that. So there was a conflict between two groups of students, where one of the group was saying, let's have beef and pork on campus. So there was one more group saying, let's not have beef and pork on campus. And the arguments were extremely political, religious, social, and when we looked at those two arguments, it seemed very mundane for us, because probably the issue should go more than just beef and pork. So what we did was we took a stand saying, we'll create the chicken campaign, where we are standing with the chicken. So this is where we start building up a political and a religious argument for a chicken. So this is how we started, like, support the chicken is a new religion. We are the holy chicken. This is where it starts taking jibes at the cows and the pigs as well. And then we come to the point where we support beef and pork eating campaign. Let it be permitted on the JNU campus. And then we go back to the chicken again. We are the face of a new religion. Trust us. We are worshipped with butter. And those students against beef and pork, we don't support them because they don't have a bigger agenda to their. So this is where we start building a political agenda to our campaign, saying even chickens can be political. We have left wings. We have right wings as well. Pigs and cows don't have wings, right? So this is where don't be a chicken, eat pork and beef. So this was a campaign that we created, and it aimed it to be a very viral campaign, an online viral campaign, where it was made viral on Facebook, email links, and we didn't hope for any change, but it taught us a lot about how do we take a stand with design, how do we put our message across. This is one more project where we looked at signages. So we visited the Tipu Sultan Palace in Bangalore with a bunch of students, and we saw an exit sign over there. Now that sort of completely baffled me in some ways, because Tipu Sultan's palace is a house. So what is an exit sign doing in a house? So we started fictionalizing the whole narrative, where we started thinking, what if Tipu Sultan was one fine day, one summer morning, he wakes up, he comes out and he sees an exit sign. What does he do? Is it a political or a campaign against him from the British? Are they trying to confuse him? Or is it still a dream because he can't, it must be a dream because he can't imagine himself getting into this predicament but only sees signs of his exit. Then we realized that fictionalizing it gives a much more interesting narrative than the narrative that was put up on site, which was bound by grammar. So this is where we start looking at probably there can be an idea of cultural signage for a city which didn't have anything to do with language, but yet it told a story. So again, this project was across 4 stories. I'll narrate one of the stories. So we looked at Kote Venkateshwara temple near KR Market. That was called the fort area or the Pete area, which had this temple, and Hyder Ali had occupied Bangalore back then, and Tipu Sultan had his eye on this Pete area and the temple because it was a place that was of communal importance for the local Hindus. So what he did was he built his palace that we recently spoke about right behind it. It was a very political move as well. So the placement of it was very important. Now the British invaded and the British started eyeing the place because again it's the central, it's a very at the core. Now they brought their artillery with them, and Tipu was in the apple of their cross eyes. Now there is a myth of the guides over there that tell a very fascinating story where Tipu was saved by the stamba in the temple, the British had fired a missile and the stamba came in between, and Tipu was saved because of that. So today if you go, and this has remained part of history, where if you go to the temple, you don't see that stamba or the column that's there in front of every temple. It's not there. So that's something that's missing. So this is where I started looking at how we can, to begin with, we had a whole graphic novel through which we could tell the whole story. But we found that it's more of a suggestion of a story which is more important, which will be more engaging than a complete graphic novel itself. So we were thinking like this could be the signage that could be put up at the temple. We also give a small QR code through which you can scan and get into the history of it, get into the details of the story of it. So those two projects were about image making, what image meant, and how do you narrate through design. This third topic that I'm going to talk about is intervention and open source imagination. This is where we explored some concepts. One of the concepts that we were very intrigued to explore. The problem with introducing infrastructure into a social fabric like India is it's very sudden. Like one day there is no toilet, one day there is toilet. So there is a threshold that comes before people start using it. You know, it's an alien entity. So we are looking at an intervention, a very interpretative, suggestive design, which we tried out at the Devi Art Gallery. Again, it's a very, compared to the Indian social fabric, it's a very, very, very sterilized situation. But it let us experiment certain things. Now, there's an exhibition that was going on called the Sarai exhibition where it completely challenged the idea of an art gallery. It wasn't a white box. It didn't have a particular real estate for each artist. But it was a huge space which was developed over 9 months by some 140 artists. So each artist put up their installation, their work, the painting, the lines on the ground. So the whole space sort of grew over time as a settlement. So we were asked to, so these are some of the installations that were existing. So we were asked to intervene or do something, do anything. So that was the whole freedom that was given to us. You can do anything. So that's where we started looking at each project, and it was still, there was a very visible gap between one artwork and the other. So we thought, we gave a proposition for ourselves where we'll put up a fabric or we'll put up a layout, a plan that sort of integrates everything. So initially we thought we'll come up with a plan, neat, drawn, but then there is a very interesting thing with artists where they're very possessive of their space, but given an opportunity they will explore. So these are some of the images of the space before we intervened. So this was a very interesting space where that was a screen in the center and there was one artist who made small caricatures and he put it up on there. And this was a pathway that went forward. So these are some of the salient points of intervention that we recognized. This was very interesting where in the same gallery in a corner, there was this artist who put up like 50 cellophane tapes. Very interestingly, I'm not sure if you can see from this image where she had created some alternate shadows, very subtle work, which unless you notice, you won't realize. Unfortunately, many people didn't even notice that as artwork. So we put 2 chairs facing it. Immediately, she started using it. People started looking at it. It was an incredible moment because the chairs suggested something and their eyes would move from the chairs to what it was. So in a way, it was, as a suggestive layout, it was quite successful for us. So people started putting roses, and again, the placement of the chairs happened on its own, where someone placed a chair next to an image of a chair. There was the speaker over there in the middle, and people started sitting around it. This is, again, at the last, the 3 chairs had become 4 chairs. So the chairs were doing their work silently. And part of it also looked like artwork, which people spent time looking at, taking photographs, and it became a very nice backdrop because, again, that was a very design challenge for us because something's hanging, how do you put something under it? So we titled this whole exploration as what's left behind. So even today you will leave behind your seat, right? There was a difference between a fixed seat, and we wanted to explore a portable thing where in a chair that is movable, as soon as you sit, you shift, you make it your own. So there is a suggestion with the layout, with the material was the chairs themselves, which was very intriguing, and we are looking at models based on this unit in a social scenario, but probably that will come next time. So these are some of the projects which are from Square One. So this is a project this is again projects that are in process. It hasn't reached anything, they're just conceptual stages, where we love tigers. And in some recent discussion with our students, there was some discussion about having a campaign of saving tigers from becoming extinct. So how do we look at it? So we looked at very direct images. So from Life of Pi, we take off the tiger. What happens? You know, we plan to create a series of images through this. This is where it gets very interesting, where there is a folk tale called Punya Koti, which is a story between a cow and a tiger. And it's a script, it's a poem. This is an image, this is an exercise in the image. But when we actually started looking at the script of it, and when we started scratching out the tiger in the script, it was very interesting because the narrative made some absurd sense, which brought out the fact that tiger is extinct in the story. So this is one more project where we're looking at, where one of our collaborators got access to a very good concrete laboratory. So we started making concrete cups, cutlery, more to come. This is where we looked at the books, if they are moved from a state of static bookshelf idea to a state of tension, and how could it be a possible urban condition if you start looking at books in a different manner. We were also partly inspired by the movie Cinema Paradiso, and we actually have a political campaign for a political party called the Paperless Campaign, without any pamphlets, but we are here to find a political party who will listen to us. So these are some of the explorations that we have, and the idea is for us to have fun with it and someday to be part of a conversation that would change the world. So that's a presentation.